My guest today is Sola Oyabede, founder of Mahogany Models, a modeling agency for people of color, one of very few in the UK. Sola has won several awards for his work in providing opportunities for models of color within a very competitive and white-biased industry.
Well, I started many years back, in fact, because I started as a model from secondary school. We used to put little fashion shows together, and I used to model in them, produce them. Then in university, I continued to do it. And when I came back to the UK, I thought there was a gap in the market. There didn't seem to be anything for people of color, both from bridal shows and also from modeling agency. So when we first started, there was nobody actually doing it then. So, you know, there wasn't all this America's Next Top Model and Britain's Next Top Model, and like now everybody wants to be a model. It was very much absolutely nothing out there. So when I started doing my first few sets of bridal shows, we used to get friends to be models, and I used to have to teach them how to do it, and I used to get cousins and anybody that would just want to jump on the stage. So, I mean, it was difficult at first, but I mean, it's a lot easier now, but that's simply because everybody's into fashion and entertainment.
Did you face obstacles that were particular to you as an African?
I think that's always the curious one, was that were the obstacles because I was an African, or was it because I was black, or was it because what the company represented? I mean, I always used to like to put it down to what the company represented, which was that Mahogany was about trying to find a niche in the market that catered to the African Caribbean market. So, for instance, there were no bridal shows which catered to us. There were no modeling agencies. There were no modeling competitions. So we were always about trying to do something with that. And on a number of times, from major newspapers to mainstream, I've been accused of being racist because people say to me, your top model of color competition excludes white models. So how would you feel if we had a competition which excludes black models? And I say, listen, just because you let us in doesn't mean that we're really included, because what's the chances that a black model will ever win one of these major competitions? You know, how many black models do you see on the covers of the major magazines out there or in major TV commercials? So don't, you know, I call it industry apartheid, which you recognize that we're around, you give us some few crumbs, but the truth of it is that you don't really want us there.
How did you overcome them, and how do you continue to overcome them?
The issue for me here is that do we actually overcome the obstacles, or have we overcome them? I think that they're always there and will always be there so long as the mainstream refuses to accept that people of color have a main role to play within the fashion industry. What we have decided to do as a company is that regardless of what is put before us, we will continue to, as I say, kick down doors. We're not going to subtly knock on the doors. We're going to kick them down, such as we did with our Italian Vogue All Black issue campaign, where we made that the biggest selling edition of Vogue ever. And we did work with the British Fashion Council. We've been very upfront and saying, look, we're not going to accept the status quo as it is. We want changes. But the thing is, as opposed to being in opposition to people, we felt that we've tried to work with them in partnership. We've tried to say to them, listen, this is not about being antagonistic towards you and slurring you. It's about, we understand that everybody runs a business. It's about making money. But we also understand that in the UK, for instance, they boast about being the most multicultural society in the world. But it's not reflected in fashion. So things need to change. And we said, look, how can we work with you? And then we hear things like, well, some of the reasons why they don't want to work with us is they black doesn't sell. Our models are very unprofessional, you know, they're always late, they're not on time. The quality of the garments by designers are not up to scratch, you know, they wouldn't make it into the mainstream shops and stuff like that. So we said, okay, fine, if that's the case, help us, you've got the money. And we work with the British Fashion Council, so they set up pilots, for instance, to work with some of the designers and show them what sort of assessment they would need to go through to feature in London Fashion Week. You know, and then we've got things like where we wrote to all the designers that were participating in London Fashion Week saying that, look, you need to reflect the community of which you're doing London Fashion Week and use more black models. And if you don't know where to find them, which is some excuses that some of them were giving, we at Mahogany Models will help you. So it's a bit of softly, it's a bit of, you know, when we need to, we've been very hardcore with the press. You know, we've done such campaigns against British Fashion Council saying, you know, British Fashion Council refuses to use black models to get their attention, and it did, you know, immediately it was like, Sola, can we have a meeting with you? We'd like to discuss this, and we've worked with them for the last 2 years about trying to address these issues. It's also about educating both designers, creatives, and our models how to do things. I mean, you were filming a little bit earlier and you saw I'm talking to the girls about their attitude. You know, a lot of mainstream casting directors and people involved in picking models say they don't like to work with black models because they find them very difficult to manage. And I remember when I first heard that, I used to think, please, don't tell me that. That's a whole load of rubbish. And then I started working with them, and sometimes it can be very difficult to manage. And I think one of the things that we have as a race is that when we are angry, we find it hard to let go. We hold on to it. Whereas in this industry, they expect you to hear the criticism, accept it, learn from it, and move on. Whereas we is like, I can't believe you said that to me. And for the next hour, and you know, and they're kind of like, oh my God, how am I going to talk to her and stuff like that. And it's like, I tell the girls, like, when they're late, go up to the casting director, say, look, I'm really sorry I'm late. Whatever happened, it won't happen again, blah, blah, blah. But what have our girls do, and I don't know whether it's how they're brought up or it's things that they think is the best way, they'll walk into a casting director, they will frown their face with that kind of look like, let any of you dare talk to me. Let any of you dare talk to me. You know, and it's like, because they know they're late, and they should have just said, look, I'm sorry, but they do that look like, don't come and talk to me, don't come and talk to me, yeah, I know I'm late, and try and bamboozle their way through it. And it's those sort of things that mainstream find very hard to accept, and that we have got to learn to change, and that's what we try and do with Top Model of Color, mahogany models, or anything that we're involved in.
Are there opportunities for people of African descent in the UK to strengthen the position of Africa?
When you live here, you sometimes get sucked into the society, because here you've got so many bills to pay, you know, and they're never late, no matter what happens, and then you've got shows to produce, the margins are very tight and stuff like that. So sometimes you sort of think just surviving England is hard enough, not to think about doing something back home in Africa. But fortunately for me, I think I'm lucky in that I've been in the business a long time, and besides, if I ever said I didn't want to make money, I'd be lying. I do want to make money. But I also, in terms of mahogany, we're also about giving something back. So we travel, because I produce a lot of shows, I travel around Africa a lot, from South Africa to the Gambia, to Ghana, to Nigeria, Sierra Leone, all over the place, doing various shows for people, and also in terms of taking our own shows there as well. And I'm continuously asked to speak at seminars and events and stuff like that about the modern industry, about the fashion industry, about entertainment generally, and about a lot of the other work that I've done. And it's through things like that that I like to try and give things back. And if I go and do any of these events, I will spend 3-4 hours after an event just talking to people, giving them advice, giving them tips, saying, look, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, giving that extra help, giving out my email addresses and stuff like that. And it's also about trying to take what we learn from here back to Africa. So in terms of the quality, you know, if you look at a lot of the shows that are taking place in Ghana, Nigeria nowadays, it's no longer just stick up a banner on the wall that's lopsided or half hanging off. Now, the stage sets that they design and the lighting now is fantastic. You know, for some of the shows, they're bringing in big companies from South Africa and abroad just to do the lighting and the stage, and they've got the big screens, and they're bringing in people like myself to direct or, you know, to produce the show. So things have changed a lot, and it's still very much virgin territory, but it's also with the likes of myself and many others that have learned their skills here, that have gone back, and many of us are going home. I think we sort of realized that in the 80s and stuff like that, 90s, that was the austerity in Africa. Austerity is now here in the UK and Europe. So people say, hey, let's go back home and try and contribute our own little pennies worth.
How do Africans stay relevant and succeed in this fast-moving, information-based economy?
To stay relevant is very simple. I would say to anybody, you've got to keep learning. You've got to keep trying to improve yourself. You know, if you do a show, and I have this many times when I speak to people that do shows, they do a show and they think, oh, my show was good. and the next year they try and do exactly the same show, whereas they're forgetting that other people have moved on. You know, you've got to keep improving. I can't even imagine the amount of shows I go to. Some of them are terrible that I think, why did I even get out of my bed to come here? But from every show that I've been to, no matter how bad it has been, I've always learned something. So, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if I adapt that slightly, bring it into one of my shows, that could bring an extra dimension to my show. And I would talk to people and I'd say, okay, how did you do this? Why did you do this? What was your thinking process? You know? And I'm never too proud to say, look, let me come and work on your show. I just love what you do, because if I go and work with somebody, I'm going to learn from them. And okay, that's really good. You've got to read magazines. You've got to go to other people's websites. You've got to listen to the news. You know, you've got to see what the industry is doing. And you've got to go mainstream as well. It's absolutely important. Even if you don't get an invitation, buy a ticket. Go to the mainstream, see what their show is. Ask somebody, can I go backstage? See how they've got things set up. Because one of the things, particularly when you're doing shows, front of house looks perfect. And you think, oh, that's a really good show. If you really want to know how to produce a show, you need to go behind stage and see the mayhem that is going on. How many backstage managers do they have? How many floor managers do they have? Do they have artist managers? How many dressers do they have? How they laid out the room in terms of the railings for the clothes? I mean, I go to many shows and there's complete mayhem, and it's because they just haven't got a systematic order in terms of how they laid out the clothes. There's no list. So you see the girls running around, what dress am I supposed to wear next? And that girl has got to be changed within 10, 15, 20 seconds, and she's spending 20 seconds just trying to find out what's her next outfit. And she goes to the producer and they're going, looking down the list, whereas if they've got it all on the wall or they've got it all labeled, all those sort of things, they do make a difference. So it's about learning, it's about improving, it's about seeing what the competition is doing and never being too proud.
There's a lot of talk about immigration at the moment. How do you think this debate affects Africans?
It's an interesting one, because immigration is always a political issue and it's always a very sensitive issue. And I think that the African mindset is changing again. I think we go through these phases, you know, about 3, 5, 10 years ago, people were killing themselves to get out of Africa and to come here. We are now in a kind of reversal situation where I know how many friends I know that live here, they're not even into fashion, not even in entertainment, have gone back home. You know, they're going home to get work, to get paid jobs, to set up businesses. So we're kind of on a reversal. It's not as much. So you tend to find that more of the people that are coming here are from war-torn countries. You know, they've got, whether it be civil war, strife, dictators, whatever it has to be. Whereas when you look at some of the stronger African nations, they're no longer willing to come here as much. They say, I'll come for shopping and I'll go back home and I'll enjoy myself, make my money, whatever it has to be. And what I found that's been really amazing is that the youngsters that were born here are actually going home. They've gone home for a holiday, they've loved it, and they thought, whoa, why am I killing myself here being a second or third class citizen when I can go home and be a superstar? Because, you know, there's no such thing as being a second class citizen in your own home, so to speak.
How better can Africans contribute to the development of the UK?
We've got to assimilate, which I think we have been doing. Like I said, you know, there's more business being set up. We also have to get that nice blend of doing things the African way with the European way. You've got to get that balance. You can't do it all the African way or all the English way. You've got to have a good mixture and take the best from both cultures, mix it together, blend it, and then you're going to work properly. We've also got to raise our game in terms of our professionalism. I mean, when I speak to a lot of people, they say, oh, if we come to your show, it's going to start late, or, you know, it's not going to be well organized, or will I have to be fighting for my seat? And, you know, we've got to change that perception of how people view how we do things. And that is through hard work. It's through also getting the right people into the shows. I mean, one of the things that I found with our shows is that we are very inclusive when we do shows. And what I mean by that is that, for example, I might be doing a show and then I know somebody else is doing another show. I won't let that somebody else work on my show because I'll be thinking, oh, if I bring them into my show, they're going to steal my ideas. They're going to maybe spoil my show. They're going to do this, they're going to do that. So instead of us working together as a team to do the best, we work separately and against each other. You know, we don't share information and things like that. And we need to do that to produce better quality shows so that when we go to mainstream sponsors, they have been to other shows and say, oh yes, I went to that show that so-and-so did, and it was really good, it was really well organized. You want sponsorship? Oh, since this is how you guys do shows, I will consider sponsoring you. And it's the same whether it be a fashion show or it be a TV program. You understand? It's about everything we do. We need to concentrate on the quality. The amount of times I go into a studio and I'm going for a filming and they've got producers there that don't have an auto cue. And they say, and I say, why don't you have an auto cue? They say, oh, it's too expensive. I say, look, all you need to do, you've got a plasma there, you tap in a computer and you use the computer to become your auto cue. And you just have somebody there scrolling down and you read it off and you look more professional. I'm sure if you watch a lot of these shows, they'll be going, and now we are here to say that, why? Because they're not reading it. They're not reading script, and then they look at the other people, mainstream, and theirs is all nice and professional. They look into the camera and say, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to our show this evening, blah, 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 blah. They're just reading the screen, and it's things that we can do. So it's about learning these little things to improve our show and what we produce, and then people are just going to love us even more.
What is your favorite thing about living and working in the UK, and why?
I was going to be funny and say that we always have constant light. Compared to when I do shows in Nigeria and other places. I think one of the things that I found that I really do like, and I realized it when I started doing shows in Africa, is that if I, for instance, decide that I'm going to get a lighting company, I'll sit down with a lighting company, I would say, right, I want 6 red lights, 6 blue lights, 6 pink lights, I want them here, 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 how much is it? He gives me his price, I give him his money. I walk away. And I know that on that day, the lights will be there, on time, put exactly where I wanted them to be, perfect. Whereas when I go to Nigeria and to other places like that, literally, I will go to the lighting company's shop, I will sit in the van with the driver, drive him to the place. Otherwise, you tell him to bring it at 3 o'clock, at 6 o'clock, you'll be calling him, you say, excuse me, sir, my tire, flat tire, engine broke down, I have no petrol. They'll give you whatever excuse, they're not even left, or they're most likely doing another job. So it's things like that that do make a difference. So you spend much more energy and time trying to make your show work compared to here, when you can just pay for things and you know it's going to be delivered. So that is a big difference. But to be fair to Africa, things are changing. It's not as bad as it used to be, you know, because people are starting to say, listen, if I'm paying you thousands of pounds equivalent of the local currency, I want a good service. If you don't, I'm not going to use you again. And on top of it, I will tell other people not to use you. So I have found that people have started stepping up their game.
And finally, what would be your advice to other aspiring Africans in the UK?
I always believe that people should be themselves. Whatever it is, don't sell yourself out. I am a Nigerian and I am proud to be a Nigerian. I'm an African and I'm extremely proud to be an African. I was born here. I spent most of my life here. But if you say to me, where am I from? I would say I'm Nigerian. I've never said I'm black British, I'm whatever it is. That's because I'm proud of who I am. But at the same time, I recognize that being in Britain, I have learned things from being British, and I accept them and appreciate them because it's part of what has made me who I am today. And I think that whether you were born here or you came from anywhere in Africa to be here, you need to accept the culture that is here. You need to assimilate and be part of it. And we need to recognize that as Africans and as black people, we can do anything we want to. We can achieve anything we want to achieve. I have this saying that if your mind can perceive it, you can achieve it. And the difference between a successful person and an unsuccessful person is that the unsuccessful person gets knocked down, he doesn't get up. A successful person will be knocked down over and over again and will continuously get back up, and he will do things and he will achieve things. And I say to people, go and read people's stories. You know, read Colin Powell's book, Read Barack Obama. Read, what's his name? Richard Branson, Donald Trump, Clinton. Read their stories, because you'll be amazed that a lot of these people came from humble beginnings. They made mistakes, they made errors. They tell you how they got through it. They tell you the kind of tribulations, trials and tribulations they went through. The best way to learn is from other people's experiences and then not make the same mistakes. You know? And I think that it's absolutely essential as Africans that we do that. And always have a positive role model, and if possible have a good mentor that you can go to for advice. And listen, it's not you have to take on everybody's advice, but the worst thing is when I have a lot of people come to me and say, oh Sola, want to get you some advice, how do we do this, how do we do this? And I spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours telling them how to do it, and they go and do the exact opposite. And then you go to the show, or whatever it was they're doing, and it's a shambles. And then you look at them and say, but didn't I tell you to do this? And they turn around and say, oh yeah, but I thought that maybe if I try it my own way. And I said, okay, fine, not a problem. So I think it's those sort of things that we have to do.